Hello everyone and welcome back to Local Liberty. This is Brian and Shane. We have a special New Year's Eve show for you today.
Yippee!
December 31st, 2015. And first topic we'd like to discuss today is something we can always count on every year, a new package of laws coming out from our pals in Hartford.
I feel safer already, Brian.
Oh yes. This is a friendly summary put together by NBC Connecticut 30. I'll link to this article as well as a link on the Connecticut General Assembly's website. That's the legislature. They have a link with all of the laws if you want to read the text yourself and go to sleep early. But this is just a high-level summary. We will go over a few of the highlights from this list. First off, of course, we can expect every year in and out, some taxes are going to go up. That's what taxes do. Cigarette tax will increase by 25 cents a pack. Just gotta squeeze a few more pennies out of those folk that you know are going to likely keep buying the cigarettes anyway. So it's not really about the health incentive. It's just about squeezing a few extra pennies out of them. So that's
and disproportionately punishes the poor.
$3.90 a pack on taxes on cigarettes, which. Yes,
sales taxes, consumption taxes, all these kind of point of purchase taxes, they impact the poor the most. So it's just, they make you even more frustrated and mad. People that already have money, they don't care.
They hurt the poor the most. Now here's one that doesn't hurt the poor the most. The income tax the higher brackets of the Connecticut state income tax are going up. Why do those keep going up? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is the rich, by definition, will always be a minority. That's just in the definition of the term. The richest are going to be the smallest group of people at the top. Therefore, in a lovely democracy like we have, they're always going to be easy pickings from a majority rule sense. And
I wouldn't say they're easy pickings.
Well, in this case, the rich would mean the upper middle class. Folks that don't want no political clout, don't want anything to do with politics. But to my second point, they have money to take. They have money to steal. So that's why you go after them. And that includes, upper middle class and on up. So the taxes on the rich are always going to go up in proportion to the lower classes. One, because it's popular. They're a minority by definition, and they have money to take.
But as you know, the wealthiest, the top 1%, the wealthiest of people, they generally just find ways to get out of paying taxes. I remember they had Mitt Romney. It took a while for him to release his income tax statement because what percentage are you paying? I think it was around 12%, which is far lower than what his rate actually was. Through various loopholes and this and that.
That is true. Yep. But these types of taxes affect far, far, far more people than the top 1%.
Right, like the top 10% and the other 9% they're well off, that they can't afford the lawyers and accountants to get through all the loopholes and all the government bureaucracy. They get hurt.
Fleeced.
Yes.
Increase that
small
fleecing.
Business owners.
Yep. And we'll talk about them in a couple of minutes. Luxury goods tax is increasing from 7 to 7.75%.
What's a luxury good?
There's a particular dollar amount. I think it's on cars over. It used to be $40,000. Maybe it's 50. Maybe it's 60. I don't even know what the actual dollar amounts are now. But basically, there's a threshold, which, and this may even include like luxury clothing items and stuff. It's basically a particular item that's expensive enough or over a certain threshold. You're going to pay more in taxes on that item.
Interesting.
This basically is the same exact thing as raising the higher income tax brackets. There's more money to be stolen from wealthier people. So, steal more from them.
This also will address other people's concerns about the sales tax and the other taxes I was talking about where it disproportionately hurts the poor. Well, okay, we can have a different kind of sales tax that disproportionately affects the rich, right? So for some people, I'm not saying I am one of those people, that's probably is a better route, but still a bad route because there's less people being taxed.
And also, there's lots of cases throughout history. There's a really good example of how, there's a phrase, the power to tax is the power to destroy. And an industry that was really damaged, I think in the 80s or early 90s, was the luxury boat industry. I don't know if it was statewide, if it was a state or federal tax, but in the 80s or 90s, there was a really significant tax that was imposed on luxury boats. And yeah, nobody wants to feel bad. Yachts, basically. Nobody wants to feel bad. It's popular to have no sympathy for a really rich dude who has to pay more on his boat. That's true. However,
I mean, I really don't have that much sympathy. I don't care.
But, and again, you can take the principled stance of taxation is theft, and it's theft for everybody. But that aside, what that luxury tax did was really damage the overall industry. And there's lots of people that were not rich who worked on building these boats, and they were affected as well. So taxation, the power to tax is the power to destroy. This is another bullet point from here, and this is in the other side of the ledger for once. Somebody is getting fully exempt from state income tax, and that is retired military. So it's kind of like you mentioned Mitt Romney a little while ago. He had a quote. He was quoted, I think, in the 2012 race, and he got a lot of negative press about this, of saying that like 47% of the population doesn't pay any taxes. And the best response to that statement by far came from Ron Paul. And his response was, well, we're halfway there. So basically, I'm glad that the retired military are fully exempt from state income tax. Not because of any particular, or not just because they're military or because they're retired, but because they're a human being that should be entitled to keep their earnings just like everybody else.
This is always a tough situation. I agree with you. Like, say, churches, they don't pay property tax. And I hear some people going, well, this is inherently unfair. And it is unfair, but you know what? Well, they got a break, let them have the break, because it's wrong anyway.
Right.
It's unfair. Well, like, why do they get away with that?
It's unfair in the sense of everybody gets hung up on like this, and we'll talk about this in another episode soon. Egalitarianism will say, okay, well, we want equality. It's unfair. It's like, say, well, if the instead of the tax, we're clubbing everybody in the knees. Then we say, okay, is it more equal and more fair that we're clubbing every single person in the knees, or we're not clubbing a few people in the knees? The less people that get clubbed in the knees, the better. So the fairness and equality that's
where I lead to, but it's frustrating when you see certain groups getting favored over others.
Well, it's frustrating when there's those certain groups that use the favor not to keep their own, but to extract from others. That's crony capitalism. That's cronyism, and that is very frustrating. Okay, so let's move on. Another big one here: corporate income tax. I had to read up on this one because I just wanted to make sure I understood what this is all about. I'll just read the NBC summary. The 20% corporate income tax surcharge will be extended for an additional 2 years. Now, when I first read that, I was like, man, that can't be a 20% income tax on corporations. That's insane. What they mean is, I read the text on this one, on that link I'll show you, and it's a 20% increase on the tax rate that's already there. So the corporate income tax is 7.5%, add another fifth onto that 20%, you're at 9%. So what they're saying is, we're going to continue to tax corporations at 20%. And I think there's a threshold there. It's fairly sizable corporations are subject to this 20% surcharge. So again, it's kind of a fleece the one that you can. But still, our two tax brackets then for corporations in Connecticut are 7.5% and 9%. And you wonder why businesses are going to North Carolina, South Carolina, anywhere else. The corporate tax in South Carolina is 5% versus 9% in Connecticut. That's a gigantic incentive for companies to say, see you later, Connecticut.
The United States as a whole, federal corporate tax rates are one of the highest in the world. So, like you go to Sweden or Norway, they have much lower corporate tax rates.
Right. So basically, what that is to keep people to keep entrepreneurial, enterprising people and businesses in this country, there has to be other huge incentives to override the tax burden, and those incentives, by and large, are here. But it's one of those things where you can't conclude that, well, gee, all these businesses still stay here despite the super high tax rate. Well, they must love paying taxes. No, that's obviously a false conclusion. The real valid conclusion there is to say, if the tax rate was lower, there would be even more, even better, even stronger businesses in this state and in this country as a whole. Okay, moving on. The next big one here, minimum wage. We've talked about this several episodes. How this is a popular, everybody loves it, but when you really get down to analyzing what this does, what incentives it creates, this hurts the people that it's supposed to help. And obviously, the minimum wage is going from $9.15 to $9.60. Is that gonna help a few people in a small way? Sure. But is it going to, in the long run, in the aggregate, is it going to cause harm to the most vulnerable employees? Yes, it will. That's what minimum wage does, and I encourage you to check out some of our other episodes discussing that.
And it also doesn't just do it from like the commonly expected way of being excluded from work. So that's why people think, oh, it's going to hurt the poor because then they won't be able to get a job. It's also going to hurt the poor because those businesses that are affected by the minimum wage, they raise their prices. Which hurts me, it hurts anyone else that's poor. Because now my dollar spends less. There's all kinds of effects that happen and people don't even think about them, the side effects, the consequences.
Unintended consequences. All right, so another interesting one on here. Body cameras on police. The Concerning Excessive Use of Force Act required that all police officers, state, university, and municipal, wear body cameras by July 1st, 2016. Some departments have already started. Maybe Willimantic is one of them.
I don't know if they are.
Okay, I know there were some local articles. Maybe it wasn't Willimantic, it was Coventry. Remember, we were looking at this article a few months back.
Coventry sounds familiar.
Yeah, so this is another one that's kind of a mixed bag. There is some pluses and minuses, I think, of this, and I think we discussed it on another episode.
We did discuss
lots of stuff we got to try to dig up and
we
send
did
you guys
discuss
some links.
it. I agreed with you that there were some issues, but overall it was a good thing.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. Here's another fun one. Diversity. This same act about the body cameras states that law enforcement will make efforts to recruit, this is in quotes, efforts to recruit, retain, and promote minority officers so that the unit's racial and ethnic diversity is representative of any community served. Well, great, I guess. This is kind of like our diversity, our chief diversity officer, whatever the heck the name of the position is at UConn.
I'd like to know like the actual wording of the law because
that's in quotes. So allegedly, that's from the link.
Right, but is there more?
You'll get the same link as everybody else, Shane, and you can read what this act does or does not do.
Because this is a non-thing. It's like efforts to recruit, retain, or promote minority officers so the unit's racial and ethnic diversity is representative of the community served. I mean, what does that mean in practice? What is that?
I'll tell you what it means.
That sounds like an outcome, and it doesn't sound like a process to get to
What
that
it means
outcome.
in general is diversity is one of those code words to basically raise your alarm bell. It's kind of like the Freedom Act, the Patriot Act. The Diversity Act, look at it very skeptically and think about what it is they want to achieve and why they want to achieve it. Because, instead of hiring police officers based on their merit, their mental stability, their ability to provide value to the people that are forced to pay their salaries, instead you're gonna just look at their ethnicity. That to me sounds like a step in the wrong direction.
See, here, I understand where they're coming from, but this is a thing where, again, the government's late to the game. Willimantic's police department's already very diverse. I mean, what? So now after you have diversity, now the government comes in to codify it in law.
Right. Yeah, we've talked about that theme quite a bit.
Like their earlier attempts to eradicate racism and whatnot didn't work, right? Because you can't just do it from the top down; it has to be from the bottom up. But after it's all the bottom up has happened, well, let's just come in. Yeah, take credit.
All right, let's see. Skip those or don't sound all that interesting about insurance. This last one, which this was the one that caught my attention the most because I just didn't realize that there was a law to be amended. This is to do with liquor stores. The number of packages that someone may have leaving a liquor store will go up to 5. That implies that it was previously lower than 5. And that's news to me. I know I've walked out of a liquor store with more than 5 packages before. So maybe this is just one of the many, many, many ridiculous unenforced laws on the books.
There was, I'm not sure if the law still exists, for bars, you can't have more than 2 drinks. You can only have 1 drink at a time.
Right, but this doesn't seem. This says liquor stores.
Right.
So,
I'm just saying it's another kind of
Yeah,
law.
I know what you mean,
What's the relevance if I have 2 on my table or 1?
Right.
Mm.
And then the second part of this is liquor stores will be able to stay open an additional hour if the liquor store wants to be open. So,
Brian, they're forced to be open. They're going to be forced to be open till 10 o'clock. They have no choice.
Well, you know what might force them in the not in the different sense of the worst use of the word force is if their competitor chooses to stay open till 10 o'clock, and gee, what do you know? Lots of consumers value being able to buy liquor at 9:55 at night. Then they are strongly incentivized to stay open till 10 o'clock. And maybe that'll be a bummer for them. Maybe it won't. The bottom line is, I'm glad, again, in the sense of, I'm glad the military retirees are not going to have 6% of their income taken from them every year. I'm glad that liquor stores are not going to be able to stay open for an hour longer. Let's keep it going. Let's get them till 11 o'clock next year.
I'm just so frustrated by this because, first of all these liquor laws and laws in the books about Sunday, specifically Sunday, they all come from a Puritan past in the Northeast. They're the blue laws. They've been around for hundreds of years. They don't make any sense in our modern times. And it's taken this long for government bureaucracy to match what the public already thinks. No, it's like, okay, yeah, if I want to buy alcohol. I mean, still a few years ago, you couldn't buy alcohol on Sunday in Connecticut. It made no sense. And then, when they're finally trying to repeal these blue laws, who are the ones that are fighting back? The liquor stores. And the arguments they give are so self-serving and self-centered. They just want to protect themselves, screw everyone else.
Yep. I won't fault them for self-centered argument because I think that's really the basis of all argument. But I think what the angle they're going for is basically the standard cronyist angle of I want to use the state to suppress my competition. Well, in the sense of they don't want to compete with a store owner that's willing to keep their doors open until 10 o'clock. So instead of competing on a free market playing field, they'd rather keep laws in place that restrict their competitors.
When I say self-centered, I mean they're only thinking about them. They don't understand that this could be beneficial for other people in the community. Mm-hmm. I mean, lower prices are good for everyone. More stores, more hours that are open. These are all good for consumers. Everyone benefits. There's only a very small group of people that don't benefit. This is always going to be the case for anything. Think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Also, so one final thought on. Basically, I feel your frustration about the sluggishness of the a 300-year-old law about not being able to buy booze on Sunday. However, I've come to the place in my mind now where that's one of our last hopes is in the sluggishness of government, in that the more inefficient it is, in the sense of because look at let's say they were extra efficient this legislative session, and this would be 12 pages instead of 4 pages. It would be 12 pages of restrictions on your freedom, and the less of that, the better. And I know I'm just being cynical about it, but
well, people argue like I see this on libertarian websites where they go, okay, all the candidates are terrible, so how should you vote? Vote in a way that will create a president of one party, and then the Congress will be in power. Split it. So they can't reach majority opinion on anything, and then nothing can get through Congress. Because once you have a president in power that's also the same party as Congress, uh-oh.
I think our history in Connecticut over the last 3 decades proves that point to its fullest. Connecticut has been, not so much the last 3 decades, in the last 10 years anyway, Connecticut has been a Democratic. In the legislature, Connecticut has been Democrat Party supermajority for a long time.
We're strongly blue in the national elections as well. We're a blue state.
And then particularly once Malloy got elected, the damage. I mean, that's where government gets more efficient in all the wrong ways. And Malloy and the Democratic legislature. They can do pretty much whatever the heck they want, and they know it, and they do it. So here we are with our economy crumbling and individual freedom being stripped away at an alarming rate. So your point is very, very well proven in this state. All right, folks, that is it, I think, for this episode. And this has been our sort of a New Year's Eve heads up. We'll send you the links to these new laws, and it's actually a pretty decent website for perusing our state government, the cga.ct.gov. Check it out in the link below, and have a happy new year. Take care.